China has responded to Trump's import taxes with a 34% retaliatory tariff on all U.S. goods entering China. One industry that could be hit hard is farming.
In a move that shook the entire trade world, China just turned away 300,000 tons of soybeans, claiming they came from Argentina. But here's the twist. The shipments weren't Argentine at all. They were U.S. soybeans, falsely labeled and rerouted in an elaborate scheme to bypass trade restrictions.
This case is a sobering reminder that the Chinese Communist Party continues to deploy operatives and researchers to infiltrate our institutions and target our food supply, an act that could cripple our economy and endanger American lives.
Chinese customs uncovered the deception using advanced tracking systems, and what they found has exposed a much deeper game, one involving smuggling networks, false documentation, and rising political tension between two global giants. This isn't just about mislabeled cargo. It's a glimpse into the shadowy side of international trade, where food, politics, and power collide. So how did this happen? Who orchestrated it? And how did China manage to trace the truth through layers of fake identities? Let's break it down. Seeds of a trade war. When Washington and Beijing started trading threats and tariffs under the Trump administration, soybeans turned from humble crops into silent weapons. No other crop revealed the true cost of a trade war better than soybeans. For decades, they were the quiet giants of American farms, shipped by the millions of tons to feed livestock across Asia, with China as the biggest buyer by far. As tariffs stacked up, retaliation hit where it hurt most. China's leaders picked soybeans as an easy target. A tariff here, a quota there, and suddenly, farmers across America's Midwest saw the price of a bushel drop overnight. Many could not understand why their harvest, which fed entire nations, had turned into a pawn on a negotiation table they had no seat at. In boardrooms in Beijing, soybeans were never just beans. They were leveraged to push back against foreign pressure. Stop buying from America, buy more from South America, and watch the pressure build in Washington. The strategy worked. Brazilian and Argentine ports boomed. Ships loaded with South American harvests pushed out to sea, filling China's gap. For American farmers, it felt like a betrayal. Generations who trusted global demand to keep their barns running watched as once loyal buyers shook hands with new partners. Some held out hope that the feud would pass. Others feared their best years were gone for good. In rural towns, old farmhouses went up for sale. Loans piled up. More soybeans sat unsold in silos waiting for a deal that might never come. As trade tensions dragged on, China kept looking south. Argentina became the surprise hero in this rerouted supply chain. Its soybean exports soared. Chinese companies signed deals overnight. But soon, numbers on trade ledgers started to raise quiet questions. Reports of unusual shipping volumes spread among analysts. Some claimed better harvests explained it. Others saw hints of clever paperwork. If tariffs locked out American beans, could someone just relabel them? Buy cheap from desperate American farms, ship them to South America, stamp them with fresh documents, then sail them to China tariff-free? No official would confirm it. No broker would admit it. But in back channels, rumors spread. Trade watchers compared numbers that did not add up. Soybeans grown in Argentina seemed to appear twice, or in amounts that weather alone could not explain. In Argentina's port cities, dock workers saw more cargo than usual. Farmers liked the sudden boom, but stayed quiet about where all this extra supply really came from. Brokers chasing big profits did not ask too many questions. They needed to keep contracts alive, whatever it took. While the shipping lanes shifted, farmers back in America wondered why prices stayed low even when global demand seemed strong. Few suspected their own beans might be taking the long way around the globe under someone else's flag. Trade inspectors in China usually cleared shipments without much fuss. The cargo arrived, the papers looked fine, and the trucks rolled out. But early in 2025, a single shipment caught the wrong kind of attention. A massive cargo vessel docked at a busy Chinese port carrying hundreds of thousands of tons of soybeans labeled "Product of Argentina." Every document lined up. Every stamp looked official. but a single customs officer noticed a small mismatch in the shipping code. One extra check led to another, a weight that seemed slightly off, a certificate with a signature style that did not match other shipments from the same exporter. Tiny details on paper started to point at something bigger. Behind closed doors, word spread fast. Officials called in lab tests. Brokers started getting calls they dreaded. Who signed off on this cargo? Who paid for the paperwork? Who decided these beans were suddenly Argentine? Meanwhile, farm groups back in the Midwest read headlines about record South American exports with disbelief. How could they lose market share when demand had never been higher? Why did storage tanks in their own towns still sit full while ships from another continent sailed non-stop to Asia? The soybean trade had become more than just a trade story. It revealed how fragile the whole system was. One loophole, one shady invoice, and billions in tariffs could vanish. Money flowed around barriers. Farmers paid the price, while middlemen collected their cut in quiet deals no one wanted to talk about. One cargo inspection might sound small, but it raised a bigger question. If one shipment could hide its true origin, how many more had slipped through? How deep did this go? And who really won when trade wars turned crops into weapons? The Great Soybean Sting. In early 2025, at the sprawling Tianjin port on China's busy eastern coast, a routine soybean shipment turned into a high-stakes customs puzzle. It began when a container, one of hundreds unloaded that morning, was pulled aside for what should have been a standard inspection. The paperwork said the soybeans were grown, harvested, and packed in Argentina. The certificates were in order. The stamps matched. But a small irregularity caught a junior inspector's eye. A barcode on a shipping sack that did not match Argentina's usual export codes. China has spent years tightening checks on incoming food cargo. After past scandals, customs agencies now use advanced scanners, chemical analysis, and digital tracking to verify what crosses their docks. In this case, the beans were sampled for a quick protein and genetic profile. Within hours, the test results showed something odd. The beans did not fully match the typical protein fingerprint of Argentine harvests. The genetic markers looked closer to strains common in the American Midwest. Alarm bells rang through the customs office. Officials expanded the inspection to the entire shipment. Inspectors checked sack labels under UV lights and compared serial numbers against trade databases. They mapped the ship's declared route from Buenos Aires, but found port records that hinted at a suspicious stopover in a lesser-known terminal in Mexico. Some containers, they suspected, might have switched ships there, an easy place to disguise the real origin of the cargo. An official from China's General Administration of Customs, who asked not to be named, told local reporters, "We rely on sophisticated tests to verify the true source of agricultural products. Even a minor mismatch in protein levels can signal that the declared origin may not be accurate." News of the flagged shipment spread quickly. Within days, headlines speculated about a large-scale smuggling network. Some experts called it a clever loophole: buy American soybeans cheap, funnel them through South America, switch paperwork, and dodge steep tariffs at Chinese ports. If true, the scheme would explain why Argentine exports had spiked beyond expected harvest levels. The trick was simple. American beans, struggling to find a buyer due to tariffs, could slip through the back door, rebranded with new documents and sold at premium prices. Brokers in South America would pocket the difference. Middlemen would get rich. Farmers back home would see no benefit. Agricultural fraud is not new, but it rarely makes headlines in such a dramatic way. Dr. Jennifer Clapp, a global food policy expert, once said, "When profit margins are tight and trade barriers are high, there is always an incentive to bend the rules. Traceability helps, but it's not foolproof." As word spread, Argentina's agricultural ministry quickly denied any official involvement. In a press briefing, an official insisted, "Our farmers and exporters follow strict standards. We will cooperate with any investigation, but Argentina's reputation must not be tarnished by a few dishonest actors." Brazil's exporters, who compete fiercely with Argentina for China's huge demand, also voiced frustration. They feared the scandal would cast doubt on all South American soybeans. One Brazilian trade group issued a sharp statement. "We do not tolerate fraud. These actions, if proven, damage trust in our entire region's export system." The discovery put Chinese importers in an awkward spot. Some companies suddenly faced penalties for unknowingly buying mislabeled beans. Others scrambled to reassure buyers that the rest of their supply chain was clean. Behind the scenes, some brokers quietly vanished, leaving unpaid invoices and unanswered calls. Meanwhile, the farmers who likely grew the beans, the American producers, watched the drama unfold from half a world away. Some found bitter comfort in the twist. Their harvests, stuck in storage thanks to tariffs, might have found a way into China after all, just without any fair payment returning to their pockets. Professor Fred Gale, an agricultural economist who has studied U.S.-China trade for decades, summed up the risk well when he told an interviewer years ago, "When trade friction raises costs, someone will look for a backdoor." Verifying food origin is complex, but it's essential to keep markets fair. Though this dramatic scenario remains hypothetical, no official record confirms that such a massive soybean switch actually happened. Trade experts agree it is plausible. Where there are trade barriers, there are loopholes. Where there is profit, there is temptation to cheat. And soybeans, often overlooked compared to flashy tech or oil deals, sit quietly at the center of this risk. The Tangan port case sparked fresh debates about how to tighten traceability. Some proposed blockchain tracking for every sack from farm to port. Others pushed for better satellite monitoring of crop yields to catch unusual export surges. Critics argued that fraudsters always find a way to stay one step ahead. Farmers, stuck in the middle, wondered what it would take to keep their harvests safe from games they cannot control. Many just want stable prices, honest buyers, and clear rules. They never planned to be pawns in a global chess match. For China, the lesson is clear. The country that feeds over 1 billion people cannot afford fake cargo slipping through its ports. For Argentina and Brazil, reputations built over decades can vanish in a single customs scandal. And for the world's food system, the case is a reminder that even the simplest crop can become the centerpiece of complex schemes when politics and profit collide. So while no confirmed reports prove this soybean sting ever unfolded exactly this way, experts warn that the incentives are real, the methods are simple, and the stakes are higher than ever. But what does this all mean for global food systems and the future of international trade? Beyond the bean, a global crisis of trust. When a single cargo of soybeans sparks suspicion at a port halfway across the world, the ripple effect reaches much further than a dockyard or a single shipment. It cuts straight to the heart of how nations feed themselves, how farmers make a living, and how trust holds together an economy that depends on cargo ships, contracts, and invisible promises. Across the American Midwest, farmers stare at silos still packed with last season's harvest. Some lie awake at night doing the math. What happens if the next season's crop comes in and there's no buyer again? A surplus at home should mean low prices for buyers abroad. But when paperwork twists those beans into foreign cargo, the benefit skips the farmer altogether. At the same time, buyers in China and other major markets wonder how many shipments they can really trust. A single forged certificate can slip through a sleepy port inspector and slip billions in tariffs past border control. The result? Honest traders pay the price, reputations take the hit, and the quiet handshake that once linked farm to table grows weaker with every uncovered scheme. The more food supply chains expand across borders, the easier it is to hide deception inside plain-looking containers. That is why new ideas for trust are gaining ground fast. Blockchain tracing systems promise an unbreakable chain of evidence from field to port. Digital ledgers would show every stop, every inspection, every time the cargo changes hands. Big shippers already run pilot programs, but small brokers and less regulated ports can still find ways around them. The World Trade Organization and other global groups are talking about tighter rules, bigger penalties, and shared databases that flag suspicious shipments before they leave the dock. But stricter rules need honest enforcement. Some countries hesitate, fearing new checks could slow trade or cost too much for small producers to follow. Technology might fill the gap. AI-assisted customs tools can scan paperwork for signs of forgery that humans miss. Smart scanners can match DNA and protein profiles to confirm where crops were really grown. Satellites can track harvest yields and compare them to export claims. These tools make fraud harder, but they also make smuggling more creative. Because at the core of all this is not just technology or paperwork. It is the question of how far people will go when profit is on the line, and survival depends on bending the rules. When tariffs shut one door, someone will look for a side entrance. When rules grow stricter, loopholes grow more valuable. In some ways, the trade war never ended. It just changed shape, hiding inside sacks of beans and shipping codes. For farmers in America, the question is simple. How do they compete if their own crops can be flipped and relabeled overseas? For buyers in China, the fear is just as real. How much hidden risk rides inside each shipment? For South American exporters, trust can take years to build and only a single scandal to destroy. So, maybe the bigger question is not about soybeans at all. It is about what happens when the world ties its food system to trust. Trust that paper is real, that cargo is clean, that everyone from farmer to inspector plays fair. And maybe that trust is more fragile than we like to admit. In a divided world where food is power and trust is currency, even a humble legume can trigger a global showdown. So the question isn't just what happened, but what happens next. As global tensions rise and trust in trade crumbles, one rejected shipment has exposed a much deeper crisis. Is this just the beginning of a new kind of economic warfare? Can nations still trade fairly in a world full of suspicion? And most of all, who really pays the price when truth gets buried beneath tariffs and trickery? Share your thoughts in the comments section. See you in the next video.